there is a 12-team playoff for the 2015 season. In this video, I'm going to be going over a hypothetical scenario where instead of a 4-team playoff, we got a 12-team playoff like we're going to be implementing this next coming season in college football. Here you have in this slide the original 4-team bracket: Clemson, Alabama, Michigan State, and Oklahoma. To the far right, we have the final top 25 CFP rankings with all the teams that would be in contention for this hypothetical 12-team playoff. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Let's make the selections and how this 12-team playoff would be selected back in 2015. First and foremost, we're going to start with the number 1 overall seed is Clemson. It's going to be the same. These top 4 are most likely going to be the same. They're 13-0, the only undefeated team in Power 5. They're definitely going to be the number 1 seed. They're ACC champ. They get the 1 seed. Alabama gets the 2 seed again. They're 12-1. They won the SEC. Only losses to Ole Miss. Number 3 seed was Michigan State. They won the Big Ten over Iowa. They also beat Michigan and Michigan State or Ohio State in the process, and they get the 3 seed. Finally, Oklahoma did not have a Big 12 championship game but they still went 11-1. Were one of the 4 best teams. They get the first round bye as one of the 4 best conference champions in this scenario. So that was the original 4-team bracket. Basically, it's going to be the same. The most interesting part would be here 5 through 12, and we're going to go down the list. Starting with number 5, which would be the Iowa Hawkeyes. They were 12-0 to start the season. Then they lost to Michigan State in the last 30 seconds of the Big Ten championship game. So they're still a really good team, but they obviously don't get the automatic bid or the bye because they were not the conference champ. But they're still the best at-large team in the final rankings of the CFP. Number 6 is Stanford Cardinal. 11-2 Pac-12 champion with Christian McCaffrey. They were really close, but they didn't inevitably get in because they weren't one of the 4 best teams. But they still win the Pac-12, get the 6th seed in the first round, and they get the home playoff game. Number 7 seed Ohio State. 11-1. Only loss was to Michigan State in the regular season. This Ohio State team was coming off their national title team that was stacked, loaded, and just annihilated people the whole regular season before upsetting Alabama and then beating Oregon in the title game as well. This team was just underperforming to all ends. They did not look like a good team at all. They were the unanimous preseason number 1, but then they faltered against Michigan State in that ugly 17-14 game. Then they turned around and beat Michigan, so they get to 11-1, missed the 14 playoff. But this one, they were 7th seed. Number 8 seed, the final team that gets a home playoff game, is Notre Dame. They finished 10-2, lost to Clemson, but they still get enough to get a home playoff game in this one. They will face the 9 seed Florida State, whose only loss was to Clemson in ACC play. So they'll get the 9 seed. They'll definitely one of the 12 best teams to make this playoff. Notre Dame will host Florida State in the first round. On the other side, Ohio State will host number 10 seed UNC, who lost to Clemson in the ACC championship game. Yes, they had a better record. They had more wins going into this than Florida State. And yes, they played a close game against Clemson. But the reason they're a 10 seed and not higher is because the first 7 teams they played did not have a winning record. And 2 of those were actually FCS teams. So UNC won 11 straight games. Yes, they're hot down the stretch. But there's overall strength of schedule in the season did not help them, but it did enough to get them into the playoff. So they will go on the road to Ohio State in Columbus in the first round. The 11th seed TCU lost to Oklahoma State and then lost to Oklahoma. They did not do enough to get them a split of the Big 12 championship, but they do enough to get into the playoff, the 12 team. Boykin's still on their team, and they will go out west on the road to Stanford in the first round in the 6-11 matchup. And finally, the Group of 5 representative, Houston, 12-1 out of the American. They were a really good team. They were they were definitely the best Group of 5 squad. They will go on the road in the first round against Iowa in Ames in that first round matchup in this 12-team playoff. So that is the 12-team layout with the teams. I'm going to go over the prediction of what I think would happen if this was the actual playoff going forward. So, without further ado, let's get into some predictions. First round, we're going to go Notre Dame and Florida State. I do believe Notre Dame would win this first one. They would do enough to get over the Seminoles. They get a rematch with Clemson in the second round of the quarterfinals. That would be in the Peach Bowl. Going down the other side, down this line, Iowa hosts Houston. I think Houston comes away with the upset here over Iowa. Yes, Iowa had one of the better defenses in the entire country that year, and they played one of the weaker schedules in the Big Ten West, but they're still a really good team. At the same time, though, this wasn't an Iowa's defense, as we've seen in recent years, 21, 22, and 23, that has just been absolutely suffocating how bad their offense was. This Iowa team's offense was a little better, but I still think this Houston squad is really good, and I think they do enough to pull the upset and move on to face Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl in the quarterfinals. On the other side, we got Ohio State hosting UNC, and I do believe Ohio State, who was again team that was underperforming to all means their predictions, but I think in the end they will take care of UNC pretty easily. I don't think UNC is that good of a squad, but they did enough to make the playoff. But I would take that back. Ohio State is just that much better than UNC. They have so much more talent, and they just turned around when they need to, and I think they beat UNC. And move on to face Alabama in the quarterfinals in the Fiesta Bowl. Finally, the first round, TCU versus Stanford. I think Stanford Cardinal wins this over TCU. I don't think this should be any surprise to anybody. Stanford is a really good team. Crabtree was the Heisman runner-up. Just led this team in all sorts of facets. Kick return, punt return, receiving, rushing. He broke Barry Sanders' all-time all-purpose yards record in a single season. So this Stanford team's really good, and I think they're gonna move on to face Michigan State in the Rose Bowl in the quarterfinals. So in the quarterfinals, we have Clemson taking on Notre Dame. I think Clemson, even though they had a really close game against Notre Dame middle of the season at home in that rain, I think it was 24-22. I think Clemson gets it done again over Notre Dame. They move on to the semifinals in the Orange Bowl. Going down the line, this is a very interesting matchup. Houston, the 12 seed, versus Oklahoma, the 4 seed. And I think going into the original CFP 14 playoff, Oklahoma was a 4-point favorite against Clemson in that semifinal game before Clemson eventually won by 20. Now, I don't think this would be a crazy, Oklahoma would be a massive favorite over Houston, but I think they still would be a favorite. But in the end, though, I do think Houston, the 12th seed out of the American, would pull the big upset over the Sooners in this quarterfinal game, and they will get it done and move on to the semifinals to face Clemson in the Orange Bowl. So a big, huge upset there for Houston over Oklahoma, and they move on to the semifinal round. The other side, Ohio State versus Alabama. This one I was weighing back and forth with many times because Ohio State played so mediocre the whole season, but then they turned it on and killed Michigan, and then in real time, their bowl game, they killed Notre Dame. Alabama was obviously the national champion. They had such talent, but Ohio State just has much talent. This was a very difficult decision. In the end, I think Alabama would still win, and they would beat Ohio State, because I just think Ohio State, with Urban Meyer's play calling down the stretch there, and the way Alabama just played all their games, they destroyed Michigan State in that real semifinal. I think Alabama, there's no doubt that Alabama should win this game, and they would beat the Buckeyes to advance to the semifinals in the Cotton Bowl, where they would face the winner of Stanford and Michigan State in the Rose Bowl. And I think the winner of this would almost be a repeat of the real Rose Bowl when Stanford faced Iowa. And I think Stanford would get it done. They would beat Michigan State, 3 seed. McCaffrey would run all over them. Michigan State, I think in most people's minds, the 2015 Michigan State playoff was one of the worst playoff teams of the 10 years. And I think they're one of the luckiest teams, that we've seen. I'm a Michigan fan, so I know exactly what they mean. The 2015 trouble with the snap kind of got them there. But they will lose. Stanford wins. They move on to the semifinals to face number 2 Alabama in the Cotton Bowl, where we are at the semifinals. We got Clemson taking on Houston, where I do believe Clemson would come away with the victory. They move on to the national championship game. I don't think Houston stands a chance. They beat Oklahoma, yes, but I don't think Houston would have a chance against Clemson. That freaking Deshaun Watson in that 2015, I think he had 4,000 yards passing and almost 1,200 yards rushing. Dude was just a one-man wrecking crew in the offense. Long ago with the rest of their team, the offense and defensively. There's no way Clemson doesn't beat Houston. Houston and advance to the national championship game, where I think they would play Alabama versus Stanford. Now, this was another tough matchup because Stanford, again, they have a great offense. Alabama has such good weapons on offense and defense. And it was been a really trendy, hot pick to pick Stanford in the upset, but I can't pick against Alabama. They were such a good team in 2015. They get it done against the Cardinal. They've gone to face the national in the national championship game against Clemson, and an actual rematch of what happened in real life, where I think Alabama would win the national championship and they would get it done in this 12-team playoff. Alabama would be your 2015 12-team playoff national champion. If you guys enjoyed this video, please hit the like button below, subscribe to the channel, and hit notification bell for all future videos. But who do you guys think should have been in this playoff that's not in? Do you think there's teams that should have been left out? And who ultimately do you think would have won this 12-team playoff with the select teams in the field? Let me know in the comments below, and join me next time, guys, for the next video. See you then.